You know what I love? Freedom. And what better expression of freedom is there than democracy? It's not a new concept, just ask these old fucks. But by God has it served us well in recent years. Kinda. After handling one of my many first world problems, I sat down to play some Oblivion Remastered. Then, unmistakably, the voice of the almighty Todd Howard spoke to me directly.
Krypton, Cyrodiil needs you. Go forth, my son. Spread democracy. Not like that. And give the people of Cyrodiil their first ever presidential election.
I mean, shit. Let's dive in. The land of Siridil is obviously an empire, not a democratic republic. At least not yet anyways. And governmental structures aren't created or destroyed overnight, and video games, outside of some of the wild mods that people come up with, aren't easy to change. So you're probably wondering, how the hell are you going to run an election in a video game with an empirical government? Glad you asked! In order to implement a presidential election within the confines of the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, there are a litany of things that need to be considered, addressed, and or omitted, like, who are the candidates? How are they selected, and what issues would they address? Are there political parties? How does one vote? Who's eligible to vote? Is there an electoral college? Why does Cyrodiil even need an election in the first place? That sounds like a lot, yes, but you need not worry. All of these questions and more will be answered for you in this video and the upcoming ones in the series. Then, we'll conclude it all in the most beautiful display of representative democracy that Nern has ever seen. First things first, why does Cyrodiil need an election? Let's take a look at the many issues the people of Cyrodiil might want fixed. Racism, violence, corruption. If you've been with my channel for a bit, you know that I've already begun diving into these issues that are plaguing Cyrodiil. And lately, now that the Oblivion gates have been closed, the issues that got put on the back burner while Sean Bean, Martin Septim, did his thing have reared their ugly heads again, and it's getting to a breaking point. With all the different races living together in cramped spaces, racial tensions are at an all-time high. Khajiit have taken to banditry. Orcs don't stand a chance to be treated fairly. Nords and Imperials are keeping to their own kind, and Dark Elves, let's just say these Inwas ain't too fond of anybody. And if that isn't enough fuel to the fire, the main man running the political show responsible for curtailing this shit is dead. And spoiler alert for those of you who haven't finished this game, released in 2006, so is his son. But nobody seems particularly interested in filling that empty leader's chair. The entirety of the empire is so corrupt that choosing to fill that seat is practically begging the local populace to storm the old white and gold and paint it red with politician blood. I hear you asking,
well, why don't these poor saps just leave?
You utter fool.
Have you stepped outside recently? Demons may no longer be pouring into our backyard, but the bandits, bears, boars, ogres, minotaurs, wolves, timberwolves, imps, rats, too much, all roaming the countryside didn't get the memo that they should fuck off. In fact, presumably, in an attempt to reclaim their land stolen by the Daedra, they're more aggressive than ever. On a good day, trying to travel anywhere in this country is just asking to have your things stolen. On a bad day, the local monsters will pull your eyeballs out through your asshole. And you don't even have to ask them to do it. So yeah, tell the poor bastards in Breville that can barely afford food that they need to hire a whole squadron of guards just to travel a few miles down the road. Have fun getting to Skyrim. Plus, where else would you go? Akavir?
That's practically offering yourself on a silver platter to the snake men.
Let's get it straight. You're not escaping the Empire by staying in Tamriel. Cyrodiil might be the heart of the Empire, but its decrees and laws reach all corners of the continent. On top of that, there's a whole myriad of different, smaller, and more pressing issues. Much like a poison, these issues are actively threatening to destabilize the very heart of Tamriel's empire. Nothing is being done about it, and it doesn't appear that that will be changing anytime soon.
Oh, you just wait a couple hundred years, buddy. It's gonna get a whole hell of a lot worse.
It's all just too much. The people are sick of it, and they want leadership that can fix these issues. It's no surprise either. Even though people, and Argonians, feel trapped within the walls of their cities, on the inside, they find nothing but alienation and hard lives. Tensions are rising. Even though the Oblivion Crisis has been settled, the crisis for the control of Cyrodiil hasn't even begun to erupt yet. How will the Empire handle the rampant discrimination orcs face? Will a decree be put in place to free Coral from the roaming hordes of minotaurs lurking just outside the city wall? If so, we'll do these things. things. It doesn't seem like anyone cares enough to do it now, and the only things the Empire should be worried about right now are getting things back to normal and protecting the citizens. Truthfully, how much did they even really do for the people and Argonians while the Oblivion Crisis was occurring? Kvatch got decimated and they've still done fuck all to provide any aid. And what did the aid that they provide actually look like?
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck?
How long until something else happens and Anvil is the next Kvatch, then Bruma and Breville, and so on and so forth? They are inviting trouble by being just so fucking irresponsible. Hell, this is the largest empire ever known on Nirn, and they're straight up less trustworthy than the Grey Fox himself. Something has to be done. The people are screaming for change. No, not that kind of change. What the people and Argonians want is this kind of change. So let me paint you a picture here. The Oblivion Crisis kicks off with the death of Uriel Septim VII. The Oblivion Crisis culminated in the death of Martin Septim, the last living dragonborn heir to the Imperial throne. Despite the best efforts of the hero of Kvatch, Cyrodiil is now under so much pressure to get its act together that the Imperial guards have been shitting out diamonds. The crisis proved to many in Cyrodiil, and indeed the rest of the nations of Tamriel, that the Emperor and the Empire itself were relics of a bygone time. Nothing they had done directly did anything to help the people suffering at the hands of the Daedra, monsters, and other atrocities afflicting the land. Truly, it was all the actions of one person, the hero of Kvatch. If all the emperors were like them, then there wouldn't be an issue, and truthfully, the crisis would have been averted before it even started. But instead, the leader of the Empire was a feeble old man who fostered illegitimate children and didn't see fit to put measures in place to circumvent the disaster, and instead chose to die because his dreams told him to. I wouldn't have chosen this man, and clearly the citizens of Cyrodiil wouldn't have either. It wasn't long before the first people were shouting
to take control of their own destiny, pleading with anyone who would listen that it was time for the people to choose who would lead them,
instead of some invisible decree by invisible gods that were clearly not as powerful as they were perceived to be. If the gods had chosen Uriel, allowed him to die, and then did nothing to prevent or stop the oncoming Oblivion Crisis, then they clearly had shit decision-making skills. If the gods were too inept to choose a leader who let his nightmares get the better of him, then who's to say that the people of Tamriel wouldn't do a better job of picking a leader?
But the Empire is, huge.
Estimates put the population of Tamriel nearing 50 million people and Argonians. How in the name of the Nine Divines would it be possible to travel the dangerous landscapes and have everyone realistically choose a new leader? Spoiler alert, it's not. Regardless of whatever size comparison you prefer from Tamriel to Earth, maybe one day in a far-off era, technology will be to the point that everyone is knowledgeable enough to be able to vote, but that era is not the third. So in this scenario we find ourselves in, Cyrodiil has decided to take matters into its own hands. Seeing as they are the most populous country and the most politically aware, the people of Cyrodiil have designated themselves as the electorate for the new leadership they so desperately crave. But they have no idea how to hold an election at all, let alone one to this scale. So let's reach across the dimensional plane and see if we can't give them a hand using our 21st century knowledge. Surely nothing can go wrong with giving medieval motherfuckers that like to pull swords the moment they're insulted the ability to choose and think for themselves. Gods help us all. Like any good upholders of the democratic process, we're gonna make adopting this new system of government super easy for the people here. They say you can only teach what you know, and I only know one way democracy is handled, the correct way. Now, over here in Freedom Land, we have two parties, those being Republicans and Democrats. For the sake of ease, we're going to use this same setup for this little experiment. Because this is not real and everything can be hypothetical, we'll blanketly apply broad definitions to each side of the spectrum, and we'll create a candidate that embodies the best ideals from both sides.
Hey, that's not fair, man. You can't forget about us.
Did anyone else hear that? Sounded like a libertarian for a minute there. Oh well. Seeing as we're already going this far, we're going to implement an electoral college for all the areas of Cyrodiil. What this essentially means is each city will hold its own election, where the voting populace will vote on which candidate they want to win the leadership. After that, whoever wins the city's election will receive that city's electoral votes. Whoever has the most electoral votes after all the elections have been completed wins the presidency. Simple, right? Look, I know it's not, and I know everyone hates the Electoral College, but it'll be fun this time, I promise. promise. Alright, to reiterate, we're going with a two-party system. On one hand, we have the Democratic Party. They are the party of social and economic equality, individual liberties, social programs, and government intervention. They value responsibility, fairness, and equality. All very important principles that would seemingly go over very well with any candidate running in post-Oblivion Crisis Cyrodiil. On the other hand, you have the Republican Party. Their principles are those of national defense, limited government overreach, and rule of law. Some of their values include freedom, self-reliance, and the sanctity of life. Also, some very good beliefs that would resonate well with large swaths of Cyrodiil's population. For more detailed info, here are lists further going into the values and principles held by each party. Oh, sorry, did I say each? I meant both. Not sure why I was thinking there was a third party. Truthfully, and in my experience, it is very difficult to find someone that falls completely in line with all the beliefs and values for the respective party they identify with. But this is a hypothetical situation in a video game that takes place in a world that doesn't actually exist. Here's some helium. I hope it helps you keep your disbelief suspended. Okay, so with all that said, now we can get to brass tacks about who is actually eligible to run for election. Traditionally, in historical democracies, only land-owning men were allowed to vote and run for office. But this is a land of men and myrrh.
And whatever the fuck Khajiit Marnonians are.
And by gods, there are plenty of women in positions of power all across Cyrodiil, so we're not gonna exclude them either. Every adult can run. Every adult can vote. The singular exclusion that I will add to this are the guards. Not only are they barred from running for president, they also can't vote. The justification for both of these lies in the same reason. They're guards. They're supposed to be impartial and apolitical. Running for office would lead to a massive conflict of interest, and voting does nothing but invite the guards to speak out about anything the elected leader does that they don't like. The last thing the cities of Cyrodiil need is a guard revolt. So just about anyone can run for office so long as they're not a guard and are a breathing citizen of the Empire. That said, with the large populations of humans, it is highly likely that at least one of the candidates would be human. Despite the people clearly wanting the issue fixed, racism will still play a role in this election. With that, orcs and dark elves are going to be the least likely to win an election. Out of all the races, orcs and Khajiit have the fewest named NPCs, so that cements an orc as definitely unpopular, but also adds Khajiit to the list of races that would struggle to win an election. Out of all the residents in each city, we can whittle it down to who is most likely to run and who is most likely to actually win. Barring gender or race, the two most likely candidates are going to be those that are already holding some form of authority, or someone who has no authority and is sick of being walked all over. Unfortunately for that little guy, he's got an intense uphill battle to go against the people who are already in positions of power. But right now, it is likely the best time to use that sort of thing to your advantage. The people in power have already had their shot. Maybe it's time for a commoner to take the reins. Hell, with elections now being the norm, is there even really such a thing as a commoner? Before the big election, there were primaries, so anyone who really wanted to run could, but they gotta get filtered out at some point. We can basically guarantee that several of the counts would try to run for office, but most of them would have a hard enough time getting everyone in their respective cities to vote for them, let alone someone on the other side of the country. That's to say that they'd get primaried so hard. But that might not be true for every count or countess. They do have to deal with people all day, so it's not out of the realm of possibility that one or two of them is charismatic and personable enough to get a lot of support. Hell, just ask some of the citizens in each city and they'll tell you exactly what they think of the leadership. Not many people have good things to say about most of the counts, but not all of them. I will contend that some are fine at what they do. So the most likely candidate who comes from power is going to be someone with authority and respect. Since guards are out of the question, I think it is likely that some of the guild leaders would be prime candidates. And no, I don't mean the hero of Kvatch for every guild. Let's just pretend they never made it to the guilds during the very pressing issue of the Oblivion Crisis. And any leadership is unchanged from the state it starts the game in. With that, I believe it is time to announce our candidates. Drum roll, please. The Republican nominee is Archmage Traven. And for the Democrats, we have Countess Narina Carvane. Okay, so let's take a look at why each candidate got the nomination. Traven is an educated man with little tolerance for practices considered taboo and is very concerned concerned with social conservatism. This is exemplified by his banning of necromancy when he assumed the role of Archmage. He also made it harder to enter the Mages Guild, showing that he values responsibility and the sanctity of the institution over fairness. When the necromancers started to make themselves known, he immediately acted to defend both the Mages Guild and the very country itself from falling victim to the maniacal hands of the necromancers. This, combined with the fact that Tamrielic society very much values education and knowledge. Contrary to many medieval fantasy settings, it is a good thing to be smart in Cyrodiil, and ignorance isn't something many people seem to tolerate. Traven perfectly embodies the role of an educated leader. I will say that it also helps that he's a Breton, bridging the gap between the human and elven populations. Hold the fuck up, he's a Breton? He's a candidate that a lot of people can proudly stand behind, and a large portion, but not all, of the Mages Guild would likely vote for him. A vote for Traven is a vote for more expansive education, magical understanding, and safety. He hopes to bring about these changes in a way that will encourage all citizens of Cyrodiil to increase their knowledge pool, regardless of their magical affinity. To bring about a safer Cyrodiil, he plans to vastly increase the number of battle mages that patrol the countryside, leading to more effective soldiers to combat the beasts that lurk the land. Next up, how did old Narina get the nomination? What the fuck does she stand for? Well, she's a woman. That's typically all you need with Democrats. She's very open to cultural exchange and seems to be rather socially progressive. This is shown in her large collection of Akaviri artifacts and willingness to display them as a museum of sorts for the people. On top of that, she's openly said that she believes that cultures are stronger when they work together, exemplifying equality and the desire to bring cultures together to be better. Further, she lives in a very cold environment and is acutely aware of environmental changes and protections because of that. Though there is an obvious wealth gap in Bruma, she treats all of her subjects equally and holds court for several hours every weekday to listen to their troubles. A vote for Countess Narina Carvane is a vote for equality, social and cultural outreach, and stronger relations between nations. There doesn't seem to be any outright sexism present in most people's views in Cyrodiil. In fact, most people say she does a perfectly good job running the County Bruma on her own, so she's already proven that she's an effective, likable leader. Not only was she good enough to beat out all the other counts that ran, she beat out everyone who ran under the Democratic nomination. And for that, she very much deserves this candidacy. There you have it. Two very different nominees with two very different sets of ideals. These are the ones the people have chosen. But who will come out on top and win the first presidential election in Cyrodiilic history? So now the stage is set. The players are ready and the people are itching to make their voices heard. Now what? In my next few videos, we're diving straight into Cyrodiil's first ever democratic presidential election. This unprecedented example of democracy in Nirn will come complete with a population census and an electoral college map, beautifully illustrated by the same son of a bitch who does my out-of-pocket thumbnails. We're also identifying the voting eligible population and answering questions you probably have, like can guards without names vote? Do the members of the Dark Brotherhood Sanctuary cast a ballot? Do the pirates in the Waterfront District count towards the census? How do you know who's voting for who? And why the hell are you even doing this? All of these questions and more will be answered, explained, and explored in great detail. So pack your bags and join me on a journey where we experience firsthand an election in Cyrodiil. Let me know your predictions in the comments of how you think this is gonna go. If there's something specific you'd like me to take a look at when I survey the populace, you can let me know that too. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss the upcoming videos in this series. And check out the rest of my content. If you like this video, there's a good chance you'll like the others too. The goal of 500 subs is approaching more rapidly than the end of the year, so with your help, I think we can smash that goal out of the park. A like goes a long way in getting this content to others who would enjoy it. Plus, I just like to know outright if people liked it. Helps me make better and better content. With all that said, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time in part 2 of bringing democracy to Cyrodiil. Bye!
Are you looking at my testicles, Nerevar?